of communion. So sometimes people will say, well, what did God do before man was created? And the answer was there was a unity of love between the Trinity. And then after the creation of man was there because that love was to be shared with someone else, right? And the easiest way to think about it is this exact same spirit is instilled in us as humans, right? So when you see a couple and they love each other and they start to, obviously they get married, they have a life together, and in the beginning, maybe they're very like, well, we want to travel here, we want to go there, we want to go this, we want to do that. And then all of a sudden, there's something that switches in a couple, and they're like, we really want to have kids, right? And the wrong answer, the wrong reason to have kids is because I want someone to love me, right? And every once in a while, you'll hear like an unwed mother say, why did you have children? And they say, because I wanted someone to love me. That's the wrong reason to have children, because kids don't love for a really long time, right? Maybe some ever, okay? The right reason is because I want to give love to something, right? And when you talk to a couple that wants to have a baby, they're very excited, right? They'll paint the room, they'll buy all this stuff, they'll buy the crib, and all they want to do is pour all the love that they have between them into something, right? And that's the right motivation. That spirit is instilled in us from God because that's what God did, right? He wanted to pour his love into something, right? The analogy I heard from my father in confession 30 years ago, it's a king who has a kingdom and doesn't have an heir is the saddest king in the world, right? And you see this, like I think it was, who was the king that kept killing his wives? King Henry, right? He kept, it's not nice, but he kept saying, you have to give me an heir because he has a kingdom and he wanted someone to inherit the kingdom, right? So this is why God created us, right? He has a kingdom that he wants to share with someone else.
Okay, next one. How do you know if you are following the laws and not God? In life, you try to do what is right and wrong. That's why you need confession, correct? How do you find that balance?
So I'm pretty sure Archie's going to cover this, but I think it's a matter of if you're honest with yourself. If you're honest with yourself, you can figure out where you are. Are you in the shallow water? Like you're not going to fool yourself if you're walking on the in the beach. You're not going. I'm in the deep end, and the water's barely reaching your ankles. And that's how it is I think in our faith. Like how deep are we going? How vulnerable are we willing to be with God, with our fathers of confession, with each other, and to get to the point of true growth? And I think that's where sometimes and Archie mentioned it, we get comfortable on the surface. We like it. There's no it's easier to stay on the surface. So I think if we're honest with ourselves and we want to go deeper and we want to like push ourselves, that's when we start realizing, why am I doing certain things? And I think that's when that switch happens in our life.
Thank you, Buona. Okay, next one. I feel like a lot of times I'm not able to defend my faith or engage in religious conversations because I don't have a good foundation. Where is a good place to start?
What was the question again? I figured one of them was going to answer.
I'll say it one more time. Okay, I feel like a lot of times I'm not able to defend my faith or engage in religious conversations because I don't have a good foundation. Where is a good place to start?
I would say that's a horrible reason to start digging into your faith. That's not why we dig into our faith. We don't learn about our faith so I can defend it and convince others. That's not why we do this. I mean, Christ said, be the light of the world, right? It's not about proving to them they're wrong, showing them up, proving analytically arguments. Faith is something, as St. Paul says, it can't be seen. It's faith in things not seen. You're not going to logically argue someone into anything, right? So if your objective is, well, how do I get deeper so that I can win arguments? That's not what we're about, right? My life is with Christ. If he chooses to use me for someone else, that's his call, not my call. And he will choose the time and the place that person needs in the way he needs it or she needs it. And I can tell you that way, in a very personal time, when that person needs support and love. The only thing that's ever changed anyone is an act of love. I'll tell you guys a story, sorry. Saint Pachomius, right, the one we mentioned in the liturgy and the commemoration, his story was he showed up to a village. He was a Roman soldier, and his job was to massacre a Christian village, right? This was the time of persecution. So he shows up, and when he gets there, the villagers had found out that the soldiers were coming to kill them. So this village went out and made a bunch of food for the soldiers. And the soldiers were like, do you know why we're here? You guys made this feast for us. And they said, yeah, you're here to kill us. And they're like, so why are you making food? And they're like, we figured you guys were hungry after many days of marching. And this was our last offering. St. Pachomius was so affected by this that he said, if I survive in this war, I'm going to be whatever these people are. Right? There's no logical argument. There's no, there's a God. Let me prove it to you. Let me show you the verses. Let me show you why God must exist. Let me tell you why evolution doesn't. These people showed love in the face of death. And he's like, I want what they're having. Right? So we don't learn about things so we can prove things, and because then you're argumentative, it's shallow, and people aren't reacting to you. You want them to react to your words. That's your ego speaking, right? I want to win the argument. I want to convince this person. I converted someone. That's all ego. That's not what we're about. Otherwise, I'd read the Gospels.
But if someone wants to be deeper in the faith, what do they do? Like, how much, like, where do they start if they want to learn more about their faith and understand more, so that if they're asked a question, they can answer? Not so much defend, but how do they do that, maybe? No. Oh, I was asking Archie to clarify. Let's say someone is not necessarily wants to defend, but like they want to know more about their faith, so that when somebody asks them, they know what to say, to explain their faith to the other person. So what is a good resource, or what should I do to be more knowledgeable about my faith and my church, so that I can, help someone learn as well?
I would say, and this may be a very unsatisfying answer to some of you, let God teach you. So I would start with the Gospels, and then I would be in the church, right? Because orthodoxy is the path towards Christ. And the point I'm making in this retreat is it's a path. It's not the objective. The objective is Christ, right? So get on the path, right? Be in the church, be in the prayers, focus every moment you can, every hymn, every song, every prayer, everything you can be a part of, and let God teach you. And believe me, every liturgy, when you come in with that attitude of flexibility, and there's a word I'm looking for. When you're malleable, it's not malleable, it's a better word. Anyway, no. Anyway, when you come into the church malleable and you come in open, God teaches, and every liturgy sounds different. And every time you say the prayer of thanksgiving, it's a different prayer, right? Live the church. Live every part of it. But don't ever settle on being shallow. Don't ever just fast 'cause. Just to get my parents off my back. I'll have Taco Bell in front of my friends so they don't gossip about me. Don't settle for cheap shallowness. Go for the depth, right? And then start to, everybody finds God in a different way. Some of you find them in songs, hymns, prayers, psalms, gospel, books, spiritual books. Each of us will find God in a different way. Something different appeals to us. My thing, I can't read. I get bored. I fall asleep. But I can listen to sermons for days. So my thing, sermons. Half the stuff I say, all plagiarized. Right? That's all I do, is I just plagiarize. And then they invite me to retreats. It's great. They pay for my accommodations. Right? So the point is, find your thing. Right? And then as long as you're earnest in whatever it is, God will speak to you that way.
Thank you, Archie. Next question is for Abuna Paul Elias. The question is about relationships, okay? So the question talks about relationships, and it's saying that in everything in life, we need to work and pray. So like, if I want to get into a school, I pray, but I also work to get into that school. If I want to get a job, I pray, and then I also work hard to try to get the internship or whatever to get me into that job. So everything requires prayer and work. When it comes to relationships and finding my life mate or soulmate, I pray and then do what? What's the next thing do I do? Pray and do what? You can give us a little bit practical advice, Abuna, please.
حد يغششني حاجة. I think if you have a clear motivation for what you are doing, what you want from this relationship, what you want from your work. Because I think if we dig down in our heart to see why I'm coming today to the retreat, let's say, let me ask you, let me take you from another aspect. Maybe I have like FOMO. I'm worried something gonna happen, I will not be with the group. Or because I love God and I wanted to know more about Him. I wanted to have a good company in God's presence. So first, let's put what I want from this relationship, even with God. I want God to be, the master. I want Him to do what I want. أنا زعلان من البابا كرولوس ما عمليش اللي أنا عايزه. Sorry, I will not come to the church again. So you have to review your motivation. Why? What you want God? Why you want this relationship? First. Second, you have to learn from your experience, from your mistakes, from your fathers. You have to learn and set different mindset so you can develop certain relationship. I think as Orthodox, we cannot do anything in our church without love. It will be tasteless, meaningless. القداس أنا باجي because I love God. I pray in my room with أجبية because I love God. I go, sometimes we misuse the relationship to be source of my satisfaction, not because I love. I'm sorry to say, I can see a lot of youth have no way to love. They don't know what the meaning of love. They take the relationship as source of satisfaction. This is abuse. This is totally wrong. Don't go for marriage or relation if you don't love yourself and you know your value. Even with God. I'm not saying God can teach you, but you have to know that God, as Archie just said, yes, He's not waiting from you too much. He's not waiting anything actually. But He wants you to enjoy His fatherhood. If you don't have this quality in your life, everything it will be competition. It will be, I wanted to do that. I wanted to validate my position. I wanted to know that I'm good, I'm fit. So it's very dangerous. You know why now people having a lot of issues in their marriage? because they marry the person that they desire, not what fit for them. I don't know myself enough. So the prayers is a good tool to change your heart, because true prayers come from a humble heart. Not I have like list I wanted to offer to God. Hey, this is my list. Deal or not deal? You wanted to do this for me? All right, we're friends. I come to you. What about God want to change the plan? Change everything for you. So be a good clay in his hand and tell him, hey, fix my life. Personally, I never expect to be a priest. Let's say, I never expect to be a priest. Never. Yes, it's something great, something I'm not worthy. Till now, I'm not worthy. But God have a plan for my life. All right, Amin, accepted. So let he be the master of your life. قول له ادي مفتاح العربية, drive my life. And you sit in the back with a baby seat and fasten and قول له اتفضل وسوق انت بقى يا رب, you are my life driver. Because sometimes we're too much anxious to know what's going to happen. I'm going to have a good future. Is this relationship will be fit for me? Habibi, if you have this heart of loving God, he will fix everything. Even you make bad choices, even you have too much struggle, he can change every bad things for your benefit, not just to live few days on earth, not to be a tool for you to know him and to continue. Because life on earth, if it's only on earth, it's very silly. Even St. Paul said that. So we're expecting always the new life with God to start today. I hope I covered this point.
Thank you.
تسألنيش تاني, ها?
Thank you. The next question is for Abu Elijah. Abu Elijah, this question is about motivation and sin. It says it's about somebody giving up. It says, I'm so over falling into the same sin over and over again that I lost motivation to fight. I don't even care to try to even fight, not even a little. What can I do?
Guys, it's hard to listen while you're talking, so, and it's hard to have for somebody else to hear while you're talking. So, Yani, give Abu Elijah your attention, please.
So motivation to keep going, if I'm understanding the question right? Correct. My advice would be keep going, right? Because one of the biggest things that the devil tricks us with is to give us a sense of despair, sense of hopelessness, that there's no way out for me, okay? And what ends up happening is that I just give up on myself and say, well, there's absolutely no use, right? But the beautiful thing is that we have to realize who we are, right? We have to realize who we are. What made the prodigal son go back was he realized that this is not his life. And he went back to the father, right? If he just thought, well, this is useless, I left, I took half the money, I did this, he would have fallen into despair and hopelessness. But the beautiful thing is he knew who he was. He knew that he was God's, he knew who his father was. So if we know who we are, if we know that I am loved by God, that he's always going to accept me no matter how many times I fall. God is not going to ask me why I fell. He's going to ask me why I didn't repent. Okay? So as long as I'm living a life of repentance, yes, am I going to fall? Absolutely. But that's okay as long as I'm trying. Genuinely trying. Okay? Sometimes we say I'm trying, but I'm not really trying. Right? But sometimes I was talking to somebody the other day and I was telling them this. It's the spiritual life is that you're literally ascending. So sometimes as you're hiking, you're going to slip. But you could easily say, or walk back, right, and not make it to your ultimate destination. Or you keep going. Yes, I slipped, but I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to keep going. So don't fall for the devil's trick into trying to get you. There's hope. God is going to accept you. God is not. No. The second you fall, the second is you get back up, right? Because think of it as if you have a wound, right? A sin is a wound. The more you let it fester, right? The more you don't treat it, or if you don't treat it fast, what happens is that it gets infected, right? And it gets worse and worse and worse. But the second you treat it, right? If you get cut, the second starts the healing process. So the repentance, even though if I fall down, the second I get back up is that restoration that begins my relationship back with God, is what turns me back around. Okay? So repentance is keep going. Don't give up. Right? The devil wants you to give up. But it's okay. And sometimes God will leave us a little bit because there are specific sins sometimes, at least from my experience, is that there are some specific sins that I don't want to say God doesn't want to help you with. No, He wants to help you, but sometimes He lets us go a little bit in that because He's trying to teach us something. Okay? And He might, and one day I promise you, God will deliver you from that specific sin, and you're going to end up helping other people with it. You're not seeing that far ahead. You're just seeing the darkness all around you. So you have to see that, you have to keep trying. You have to keep going and trust in God's love, trust in His faithfulness, trust in His promises, that He's got you in His arms. Okay? Even though I walk through the valley of death, I will not fear because you are with me. And sometimes the sin is that valley of death. But don't fear. You're not alone. Just keep going. Just keep going. Okay?
Sorry, I mean, I have something to add to that. I totally agree with that. In fact, especially the last thing you said, Abuna, is really fantastic. I know I have a sin that I struggle with, and it just keeps me down, right? And I've been struggling with it, and yeah, there's despair. But then I found out about someone in my parish who fell into the same sin. And I know that my reaction to that when I heard was, oh man, I get it. And it was the opposite of judgment, right? Because that's maybe where I would have tended before. So I think God almost, I know this sounds crazy, but He lets us struggle, maybe, longer with something so that we have the empathy for someone else who falls maybe into the same thing. And, you know, He told us, judge not lest you be judged. That's pretty powerful. So if just my struggling with that sin caused me to, in this one instance, not judge, wow, what a gift, right? So I think that's...
Okay, the next question is for Mary, actually. Mary says here, how can we distinguish the voice of God in our lives? How sometimes we think that God is saying something to us, but how do we actually know that this is God's call or God's voice in our life? And it's not just us wishful thinking, sort of bringing ourselves to what is real.
If anyone knows that answer, I would love it. I don't know. I've thought a lot about God's will, right? So this is essentially a question about God's will. And I myself have had this experience, and I walk with people who are having this. I don't know if it's God's will for me to move to Northern California. I don't know if it's God's will for me to marry him. And, they come to me because I have gray hair, and they think there's something there, but I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes, I think it's complicated. I think God's will is for you to ask that question. God's will is for you to intend to do what he wants. And I think that's it. So then if you go to Northern California, if you're marrying someone else, you're doing God's will, I think. I think on the one hand, we want him to answer the big questions for us. And what I just said is that, either way, you're doing his will. But on the other hand, he wants us to ask if we should take this next step. Should I open my car door now? Should I park here? Right? So what he wants is for us to be asking him and to have the intent of doing what he wants. And then anything we do is what he wants, I think.
Thank you, Mary. The next question is for Tasoni Delia. The question says...
أبونا بس.
Sorry, تفضل.
No, I just to follow up, I just want to add, I think we get caught up with what the will of God is versus which choice does God want me to take? I think those are two different things. Like if I'm picking between this school or this school, then we say, what is God's will for me for this school or this career or this career or this relationship or this relationship? I think that's the wrong way to look at it, because then we're looking at God as like a magic 8-ball type of thing. Like where we're like, please choose for me one of these, and then that's what we want God's will. But St. Paul talks about God's will as very clear. He says, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification." That's the goal. And through that, if we are truly living up to God's will for us, reaching out and going deep and being set apart, and just like the verse of the retreat, sanctifying ourselves, then the decisions become easier. They become clearer. And it's not that you're going to get an email or a text from God saying, you know, here's, but you're going to see the doors open. You're going to feel more comfortable. You know how when sometimes you wonder, did I make the right choice? And if you go to your father confession, sometimes the question that I've heard many times and I've seen in my own father confession, it's like, did you feel peace? That peace is because of that sanctification. That peace is because God is working inside of you, and because your goal is to be set apart from God, your life is set apart from God, then your decisions are going to align with that. So I think we need to elevate what the will of God is more than just choices, but like a way of life, a way of sanctification in our life.
Thank you, Bona. Thank you so much. Tasoni Dali, the next question is for you. It says, how involved does God want to be in my life? I feel like most of the things we pray for are the big things, like work, school, relationships, just kind of those big things. Is it a sin if I don't involve him in the little things in my life? Like, I guess what they're saying is like day-to-day tasks, like where I'm going and what I'm doing and who. Like, is that a sin if I don't do that? Is that something we should be striving for? Or is it sufficient to just be involved in the big things?
For God to be involved in the big things? Is that
Is it-
like big decisions?
Is it a sin for us to not involve God in the little things? So the person is asking the question saying, does God only need to be involved in the big things, or can he also be involved in the small intricacies of my life, like the day-to-day decisions and the tasks of my life?
Well, number one, I don't know about being a sin, okay? But I think going along with the previous question and what Abuna said, it's about a relationship with God. It's not about, involving God when I need him certain decisions and not involving him in certain things. If I'm going to have a relationship with God, it's going to be all the time. It's not just limited to certain things. And when you have a relationship with someone, it's not just on the weekend or on Wednesdays and Fridays or something like that. You have a relationship every day, all day. And that's when we're able to hear his voice. God's voice is not very loud. It's very subtle. And like Abuna said, and like Mary said, I mean, you will feel that peace. You will hear God's voice, and then you won't even need to question, do I need to involve God or not? Because he's already involved in your life. He's part of you. He's in you, So that's kind of what we want to strive for, not to just have that transactional relationship with God. It's not about only, I'm only reaching out to God when I need him, but I'm going to the store, what should I eat for lunch? Do I need to involve God for, it's not, you will know already, that's not something, but, God's already on your mind. You're already, there's a relationship. You're talking to God all the time. When I don't know, some of you are married and some of you have long-term relationships, when you have that relationship, you just have that connection with each other. You sometimes, you answer each other's, questions, you complete each other's thoughts. So you don't get that by just talking when you need a certain thing or you need to ask, is this good or not? It comes from a daily relationship, you know each other. So you need to know God, he needs to know you, and then it kind of automatically happens. So that's kind of what we want to strive for. Get away from, prayers and transactions and, is it a sin or is it not a sin? It's more like, how do I, grow and build that relationship with God, and then everything that you're asking about is just going to become natural. You won't even ask. I hope that helps.
I mean, what Sonny Dalia said was perfect. There's one quote by St. Augustine. He says, "Love God and do whatever you want." So obviously don't do whatever you want, but I mean, love God and do whatever you want. And I think that kind of captures it.
Okay, Archie, this question is for you. So in your talk, you mentioned the story of the deacon that did not know the translation of the Greek translation. And when you asked him about the translation, he didn't seem to know the translation. Well, you can make the same argument for Coptic now that it's a dying language. So my question, in a nutshell, how do you keep your identity without losing tradition?
Our identity is in Christ. And first and foremost, we're the sons of God. And I think before I'm an archdeacon or a father or a son or a brother, I'm the son of God. That's our identity. And I think that should be the main focus. Saying my identity is I come from this country, Coptic, which means Egypt, that's not really an identity. It's like kind of saying I'm an engineer. That's not really my identity. And one of the falsehoods that Satan has told us in the LGBTQ world is I identify as this, or my identity is I'm gay, or my identity is whatever. And it's very important that we very clearly tell them, no, that's not your identity. You have one identity. You are the Son of God. And if someone says, do you identify as an archdeacon? I say, no, I identify as the Son of God. And so anything other than that is no bueno. Right? So identifying as, well, I'm St. Athanasius, well, I'm St. Justina, no bueno. Right? I identify as I'm Coptic, you're not. You're Greek, I'm Russian. I mean, we can do this all day. And I think humans in general our desire is to be in a group. Proclivity, thank you. I hate her. Our desire is to be like identified as something. I'm this. Are you this? You know, and then even within churches, you know, you say, you know, you'll hear about someone, you know, God forbid, none of our fathers, you know, but a priest will say, don't go to that church. You're part of this church, right? That's called a cult, right? And we can make the church a cult, right? We can say, well, no, it's for our people, right? We put walls around the church. Are you not brown? I'm sorry, you don't get to come. Only for brown people, right? So the church can very quickly degenerate into a cult, and it did on the day of the resurrection. Do you remember when? It said the doors were locked and the disciples were scared. Okay? So they locked the doors and they were scared of the outsiders. Right? And at that moment, the church was scared. The apostles were scared. And they didn't trust outsiders. And they didn't want anyone from the outside to come in. That is a cult. And at that moment, they were a cult. And then what happened? Why were they a cult? Because Christ was not in their midst. And as soon as Christ came in their midst, they unlocked the doors and they went out everywhere and preached the name of Christ and the gospel, right? Because Christ wasn't with them. So when Christ is with us and he's my identity, I don't fall into that cult-like behavior where I lock doors, keep it insulated. We don't want the outsiders influencing us. We don't want them to dilute us, them. That's dangerous. It's not Christianity. My objective is not to keep traditions. Like I just said, tradition is alive. Tradition serves me. It serves humans at whatever time I happen to be living, whatever century I happen to be living in, whatever situation happens to be happening. It serves me to find Christ. My objective is not to keep traditions at all. That is a false objective.
Thank you, Archie. One final question, and we'll go to Abu Nepal. With this question, it says, it's about confession. Abuna. It says, confession is something that I've always struggled with. I do it just because I have to. But I've never really felt eager to do it or to go to confession. How can I make it into something that I can look forward to? And does it matter to pick a father of confession that I feel comfortable with? Or should I not spend finding a father of confession that is a good fit for me? Should I just go and do it? You know, should I just go and confess?
It's a good question. It's all about to confess in front of yourself first. Face yourself. Confession is start in your heart that I want to be honest and real with myself. Because I might come to Abuna and say, Abuna, I did that and that and that, and then خلاص. يعني it loses its meaning when you come to Abuna without genuine heart and real person. And confession also is before God, you know, in His presence. And confession is not, Abuna is not a policeman. ها عملت دي طب ليه يا ابني كده. It's not like that. It's confession is a tool for you to see how much you are important to God. Abuna Tadros Ya'ub always teaching us. Confession is all about love. 90% of the time to sit with Abuna is not about the sin. 90% of the time your level and quality of love to God. When I take the confession in this way, because the sin is a result of lack of love, simply, right? When I love God so much and He filled my heart, the sin will not be part of from my day, because the sin is the fruit of dryness, and that's normal. And also, you have this time to fight, and you will enjoy this battle to be conquered. In your age, Habibi, you have the quality and the grace from God. God gives the youth and this transition in your life to conquer and fight and enjoy the freedom, enjoy the meaning of your trip and journey with God. You are in a great time in your life. Remember always, even Solomon said in the Old Testament, remember your Lord in this time, because this is a great phase in your life. So confession will be a great tool for you to help you not to be a burden. صدقوني, I do remember one girl came to me because my church name is Saint Mary Magdalene. And she said, oh, there is a church under Saint Mary Magdalene name. Mary Magdalene was having a bad past, like all devils controlling her, 7 demons. So inspired her to have a hope that, oh, Mary Magdalene have a church in her name. She's not just a history. No. So she came and said to sit with me, and then we start to speak about the confession, and about the confession is a way to face yourself. Like أنا بطلع كل حاجة inside me and face myself. So Abuna will be just the ear of Jesus and the voice, but the presence. And أنا أحب قوي أخد قعدة الconfession very serious, not because to be scared, but to be serious, because it's a sacrament. مش fun. Fun in terms of, because word of fun is used in different ways, but it's fun when you are released and relieved. Take it as a way to enjoy this. We're lucky in our diocese. We have great fathers. Of course, you have to have this quality with your father, but don't forget, this is a meeting with Jesus. Like the Samaritan woman, He is ready to give you a new chance. Jesus, Abuna is a tool. عارفين Abuna is exactly like what? You know the pharmacist? What is work? To make sure that you are the patient and to give you and dispense the medicine for you. So He's not giving you anything from His pocket. في pharmacist معنا؟ ها؟ طب كويس. So His job to do what? To give you what God gave you. You have gifts from God. He will just to make sure that you are honest, and because if someone hates someone and he not ready to forgive him, Abuna is the way to know. We need to make sure that we are clear in heart. So it's a gift to help you and to make sure that you are reconciled with God and with yourself and with your brother. That way the peace will come to your heart. But it's really it's not okay. And it will have very negative impact in your life to go without father of confession. Not because أبونا is free يعني وعنده وقت كتير فعايز يقعد يسمع. No. It's gift. This lady said to me, after I sit and confess, I started to know myself and started to recognize there is a chance. So enjoy this, and I think you're gonna find a lot of good priests to enjoy with you this journey. Don't leave this great sacrament. صدقوني, you will enjoy. حد عايز يضيف حاجة من موضوع confession?
Thank you, Abuna. Okay, guys, I wrote you guys a poem, but before I read my poem in front of all of you, which is very scary, let's first give a round of thanks and applause to our clergy and our servants. And then in addition to that, I'm going to say one more thing before my poem. Marchie talked about in his talk, he talked about confession and how people stop confessing when they become adults, and now we ended off the Q&A with a question on confession. Maybe it's been a minute since you've confessed, or maybe you confess regularly, but God really put something specific on your heart tonight. The app has a new feature, like we talked about. Schedule a confession, take advantage of the clergy while they're here tonight, and just get that confession here. We have the clergy here until as long as you guys need. If you have a confession that starts at 12:59 and it goes till 4 a.m., it's illegal for them
It's
to
not
stop.
free today, okay? It's not
Okay?
free.
So seriously, take a second and look inside yourself and see if you guys really want to confess tonight, okay? So now, we have an announcement, but I was kind of getting sick of all the announcements, so I wrote this announcement as a poem. I call this one, Free Time. In halls of fellowship, 3 choices stand tall, where free time unfurls for one and for all. In the game room's laughter, joy takes its flight, or in the dining hall, share stories tonight. Or maybe in the chapel, a retreat